Well, you and I had a discussion the last time about intent. You and I see the statute differently. My opinion doesn't matter. Yours does. You're the head of the Bureau. But in my judgment, you read an element into the statute that does not appear on the face of the statute. Well, you and I had a discussion the last time about intent. You and I see the statute differently. My opinion doesn't matter. Yours does. You're the head of the Bureau. But in my judgment, you read an element into the statute that does not appear on the face of the statute. But in my judgment, you read an element into the statute that does not appear on the face of the statute.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Director Comey. Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
Our investigation found that there was classified information sent.
So it was not true?
Right. That's what I said.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for a little shorter answer so you and I are not here quite as long. Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true. There were a small number of portion markings on, I think, 3 of the documents.
Secretary Clinton said I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. Was that true?
There was classified material emailed.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Secretary Clinton said neither she nor anyone else deleted work-related emails from her personal account. Was that true?
That's a harder one to answer. We found traces of work-related emails on devices or in Slack space, whether they were deleted or whether when a server was changed out, something happened to them. There's no doubt that there were work-related emails that were removed electronically from the email system.
Secretary Clinton said her lawyers read every one of the emails and were overly inclusive. Did her lawyers read the email content individually?
No.
Well, in the interest of time, and because I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon, I'm not going to go through any more of the false statements, but I am going to ask you to put on your old hat. False exculpatory statements, they are used for what?
Well, either for a substantive prosecution or for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution.
Exactly. Intent and consciousness of guilt, right? Is that right?
Right.
Consciousness of guilt and intent. In your old job, you would prove intent, as you just referenced, by showing the jury evidence of a complex scheme that was designed for the very purpose of concealing the public record. And you would be arguing, in addition to concealment, the destruction that you and I just talked about, or certainly the failure to preserve. You would argue all of that under the heading of content. You would also be arguing the pervasiveness of the scheme, when it started, when it ended, and the number of emails, whether they were originally classified or up-classified. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also probably, under common scheme or plan, argue the burn bags of daily calendar entries or the missing daily calendar entries as a common scheme or plan to conceal. 2 days ago, Director, you said a reasonable person in her position should have known a private email was no place to send and receive classified information. You're right, an average person does know not to do that. This is no average person. This is a former First Lady, a former United States Senator, and a former Secretary of State that the President now contends is the most competent, qualified person to be president since Jefferson. He didn't say that in 08, but he says it now. She affirmatively rejected efforts to give her a state.gov account. She kept these private emails for almost 2 years and only turned them over to Congress because we found out she had a private email account. So you have a rogue email system set up before she took the oath of office, thousands of what we now know to be classified emails, some of which were classified at the time. One of her more frequent email comrades was in fact hacked, and you don't know whether or not she was. And this scheme took place over a long period of time and resulted in the destruction of public records. And yet you say there is insufficient evidence of intent. You say she was extremely careless, but not intentionally so. You and I both know intent is really difficult to prove. Very rarely do defendants announce, on this date, I intend to break this criminal code section. Just to put everyone on notice, I am going to break the law on this date. It never happens that way. You have to do it with circumstantial evidence. Or if you're Congress and you realize how difficult it is to prove specific intent, you will formulate a statute that allows for gross negligence. My time is out, but this is really important. You mentioned there's no precedent for criminal prosecution. My fear is there still isn't. There's nothing to keep a future Secretary of State or President from this exact same email scheme or their staff. And my real fear is this. It's what the chairman touched upon. This double-track justice system that is rightly or wrongly perceived in this country. That if you are a private in the Army and you email yourself classified information, you will be kicked out. But if you are Hillary Clinton and you seek a promotion to Commander-in-Chief, you will not be. So what I hope you can do today is help the average person, the reasonable person you made reference to, the reasonable person understand why she appears to be treated differently than the rest of us would be. With that, I would yield back.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the FBI's investigation into her seemingly criminal conduct is a case in point. It seems clear that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton committed multiple felonies involving the passing of classified information through her private email server. The FBI, however, declined to refer the case for prosecution on some very questionable bases. This past Friday afternoon, the FBI released additional investigative documents from the Clinton investigation, which demonstrate, among other things, that more than 100 of the emails on Secretary Clinton's private server contained classified information and that emails required to be preserved under Federal law were in fact destroyed. Even more alarming, we have recently learned that President Obama used a pseudonym to communicate with Secretary Clinton on her email server. Why is this relevant? As Secretary Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin, claimed, when informed by the FBI of the existence of an email between her boss and the President, how is that not classified? Armed with knowledge of the President's now known to be false claim that he only learned of Clinton's private email account, quote, the same time everybody else learned it through news reports, end quote, did the FBI review why the President was also sending classified information over unsecure means. In effect, this President and the former Secretary of State improperly transmitted communications through non-secure channels, placing our nation's secrets in harm's way. Secretary Clinton's decision to play fast and loose with our national security concerned not simply her daughter's wedding planning or yoga routines, but instead, quoting you, Director Comey, quote, 7 email chains concerned matters that were classified at the top secret special access program level when they were sent and received. Top secret special access programs contain some of the most sensitive, secret information maintained by our government. This is a truly remarkable fact. Were anyone of lesser notoriety than Hillary Clinton guilty of doing this, that person would already be in jail. For Americans unsure what a Special Access Program, or SAP, is, it is the kind of information that a war planner would use to defeat an enemy, or even clandestine intelligence operations. The Wall Street Journal explained that a SAP usually refers to highly covert technology programs, often involving weaponry. Knowledge of these programs is usually restricted to small groups of people on a need-to-know basis. For those wondering whether this kind of information on an unsecure server is a problem, you need read no further than the Huffington Post, which reported Hillary Clinton's private email server containing tens of thousands of messages from her tenure as Secretary of State was the subject of hacking attempts from China, South Korea, and Germany after she stepped down in 2013. To conclude, let me ask everyone to engage in a thought experiment. One of this nation's signature accomplishments in the war on terror was the raid on Abbottabad, Pakistan, on May 2, 2011, that resulted in the killing of Osama bin Laden. That operation, which was conducted by an elite team of U.S. Navy special operators, was, of course, highly classified. Now imagine, if you will, that classified information relating to the raid was passed through a non-secure email server and was accessed by nations or individuals hostile to the United States. Rather than a highly successful covert operation, we might have had a team of dead U.S. servicemen. Hillary Clinton chose to send and receive top-secret information over a personal, unsecure computer server housed in her various homes and once reportedly placed in a bathroom closet. These actions, without a doubt, opened these communications to hostile interception by our enemies and those who wish America harm. These facts, and not the imagined history I have asked you to contemplate, were the basis of the investigation by the FBI, and these are the facts that you, Director Comey, chose to hold unworthy of a recommendation to prosecute, saying that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. We, as Congress and the American people, are troubled how such gross negligence is not punished, and why there seems to be a different standard for the politically well-connected, particularly if your name is Clinton. Mr. Director,
Did it have anything to do with